Hey there, vinyl community. I just got home from a long day. You know, that week before the holiday break is a busy one. Everyone's trying to get everything done and taken care of. So we're doing the same. Put some music on. Just wanted to put something on kind of quiet and slow, build myself up. But um, Along the lines, started thinking about music that I picked up on the last few years that have really, made my taste in music really really open-minded and willing, with a willingness to hear, whatever it might be, whether it's music concrete, or whether it's free jazz, or whether it's a million other variations of things that to just be open to anything. And one of the first bands that I thought of that kind of got me, you know, um, got a willingness in me to listen to different things that I think people might appreciate. I don't hear too many people talking about this anymore. Um, this is their this album came out in 2014. So it goes back a little ways. This is what they were referring to as like death jazz, or this is like listening to a glacier move in the best sense. um, it's very slow. Definitely has a kind of funeral or a sense of impending doom about it. It can be incredibly hypnotic, and there's a beauty to it for sure, but it's a beauty that always has a kind of sinister realm. Now, the Club of Gore always worked in this territory, and this album, though, is a little bit different than I think some of their other stuff. I don't like everything that they've done, but this album, as you can see from the cover there, moves in a more, has the piano as the centerpiece, as opposed to, like, I think on some of them it's the saxophone. This I found to be more appealing, and while still keeping that same glacier-like movement from one aspect of the music to the next, or even from one song to the next. And you can tell by the song titles, there are quite a few. They did do some reissues of this a couple years ago. I've heard some not great things about them. For me, this is the one that I heard that I really loved, and that I haven't heard anything else yet that I felt like I needed to have. But I'm glad to have this, and when the mood strikes, man, this is really deliciously creepy. So check it out. Some more recent. There's an album, and I don't remember where I heard about this from. It might have been from Stunty Stream, although I don't specifically remember it, but it could have been. So, and he probably deserves credit for turning me on to so many other things. This is a unusual. Terry Jennings. This is a piece of music that had been composed in 1960, and then in 2016 finally realized. And what's interesting about it is, you read the title, piece for cello and saxophone, and when you listen to this, the first thing that you're going to notice about it is that there is no saxophone at all. This is very much a drone, and I think folks have, this kind of became a little bit popular for a while. I don't know about its availability anymore. I think it kind of got snapped up pretty quick. It's a beautiful recording. A drone. The cello acts very much as an instrument that moves again at the very slow pace, moving and weaving its way through odd sound structures. There's not, for me, a lot of color on this, but it doesn't harm the recording at all. There may not be a lot of color in it, but there's a lot of vibrancy to the recording. It's very much a living and breathing composition. I found it endlessly fascinating, and it's a beautiful release. Like I said, I don't know what the availability is, but just to give you some idea what that looks like. It's a 2 LP set. I don't remember it being particularly expensive at all, but if you haven't checked this out yet, I highly recommend it. A gorgeous piece of music that works primarily in blacks and grays and purples, and creates an atmosphere that is open and adventurous, and doing a lot with just a limited amount of music. The cello very much ends up sounding like this electronic instrument. Oh, check it out. I think that's too loud, huh? There goes my record. Next, I actually have this on right now. This is Silver Apples on the Moon, recorded by Morton Sobnik. I guess this is, what I've read about it is that it was considered one of the first electronic music pieces put out by a major label. So, and it actually did, I guess, very, very well on the classical music charts at the time. I think this was 67, 68, something like that. It's an interesting record. I wouldn't say it's my favorite record of this type, but I think in 67 they were still struggling a little bit to see where electronic music was going to go, and at the time this seemed like the future. These kind of futuristic sounds has a real cinematic feel to it. Reminds me of that science fiction film. I won't be able to think of the name of it right now, but it seems like it could have been a 1950s or 1960s soundtrack to a American science fiction film. An interesting recording, and I'd recommend it if you can pick it up for a reasonable price. I don't think I paid but $5 or $8 for this one. And I think it still can be found pretty cheaply. It sold quite a few copies. Like I say, it was kind of a hit, and I guess there were invitations for Morton to go on some shows, and he didn't want to. He felt that he didn't want his instrument to become the synth to become a gimmick. Something that was not looked on as for serious composition. He wanted it to be looked on as an instrument for serious composition. He didn't want it to be looked on as something to just laugh at or kind of a gimmicky kind of music. And so he stayed away from all that, and maybe even stayed away from having even more albums sold, which I don't think he cared about. Silver Apples of the Moon. Pretty interesting recording. Next, this isn't really music. I used to listen to some late night shows. There used to be a show in Canada called Brave New Waves, and it used to be on in the late 80s and I think through the early 90s. And it was on real late at night. I would catch it sometimes, and they would do these fantastic overviews of one band sometimes, and just do these overviews. And then other times they would just get caught up in these kind of recordings that I had never heard of before. And one day they were playing stuff that was just from like something from another planet. They were kind of taking sounds and conversations and recordings and manipulating them very political, um, very questioning of authority, and very questioning of the kind of preconceived notions that we have about who our friends are and who our, quote, enemies are. And I think really, there was a series of albums. This is Negative Land. And I know there are people who've heard of Negative Land. And these are kind of, how are you going to put it? He did a lot of, kind of commercial terrorism, let's call it, where they really were trying to spoof the media in the United States and their willingness to not do their homework and research and broadcast stories. They did a bunch of experiments where they did media press releases on supposed news stories that were completely fake, and then saw a huge amount of the American media picking up and regurgitating the story over and over again as if these were true stories, and exposing how easy it was for just this group of guys to pump out a press release and get the New York Times and other media to pick up on all those stories. It should make us wonder about everything that we're hearing. And when you hear things like there are CIA people who sit on the board of every major media company in the country, and what are they doing? Just a question to ask, not to be too political. Anyway, Negative Land asked all those kind of questions and a lot more. They attacked everyone, the right, the left, religion, everything. There's a track on this, I should show you, called Time Zones. If you're going to listen to anything by Negative Land, put on Time Zones. It is a spoof on late night right-wing radio in the United States, and how really idiotic people could sometimes come off, people who thought that they knew what they were talking about, making these assumptions about, in this case, about the Soviet Union and the threats that we face in America. You know, keep in mind that America is a country that constantly feels like it's being threatened by another part of the world, and we want border walls, and we want lots of efforts from our government to protect us from these perceived enemies. And Negative Land really goes after that. And really interesting band. Like I said, very political. If you're easily offended by, one side or another, the best thing I could say is that they were kind of equal opportunity offenders. To me, I like to hear criticism. I like to hear sacred cows being gone after, even if those sacred cows are my own, because scrutiny and daylight is something we should all want. We don't have much of it. We don't have as much of it as we think we have. I think that people feel like we have a free press and we have freedom of speech. And I think when you start to look below the layers of what really gets on the radio and why, or radio, television, media, those things are old terms now. Now it's YouTube and podcasts, and we should think a little bit about where they're coming from and what they're trying to tell us. Anyway, Negative Land is a good resource for that. Not around anymore. These albums are not expensive, or at least they didn't used to be not that long ago. This is my favorite one. And each one, there's a great kind of media hoax on celebrity called Michael Jackson. Escape from Noise is another funny one. The Playboy Channel. Like I said, the one that I really like is Time Zones. Yellow, Black, and Rectangular, hilarious. These are they're funny and interesting and make you think. And we need more of all those things. Done in a serious way, done in a serious way, and still having a bit of a laugh at it too. Negative land. Finally, an album that was probably one of my, I definitely got, I think last year. This was definitely from Stunty's live stream, and he one day played a bit of this record, and it just blew my mind. And I was familiar with Music Concrete, but not with the, what's so amazing about Stunty's live stream is the depth that he goes into it. And so you're not just hearing a recording, you're hearing what is probably the finest recording in that particular area. And I was lucky enough to hear this one day and was just blown away by the use of sounds in composing, sounds that we're not ever think of as sounds that would be in Western composition. To me, when I heard this, it was a complete changing of the rules. People always talk about, being radical. And to me, this was just one of the most radical recordings I had ever heard. If you want to give this a listen, even more so than like free jazz, this is something that you have to approach with an open mind and a willingness to accept that music can be created, the scope of what we think of as music, that we need to really grow that, what we think of as music, that the world around us, the world off of, Western Europe and North America has been moving well beyond these sounds for a long time. And there are people in the West too who are broadening the definition in a good way of what we should be considering music. Man, this is an amazing recording. Beautiful. The packaging on this is just stunning. I don't even want to open it up, but it completely opens up, and it's full of these amazing press releases on the music. And yeah, if you get a chance to give this a listen, 1982. And in a lot of ways, despite, like I talked about the boldness and the radicalness of it, and yet that cover, to me, is so interesting. The harmony of it. And this music has, despite, like I say, the radicalness of it, there's a harmony to it that you need to give this a listen and stick with it. Anyway, a couple quick records there. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to go have some food and have a good week.